You know, when it comes to the Tennessee Titans, they're one of those teams that's kind of hard to figure out because there's so much attention the past couple of years on teams like the Bengals and the Chiefs and the Bills, right, in the AFC. But there's kind of that matzo ball hanging out there of the Titans in terms of, hey, this is a team that you may not want to play in the playoffs, right? This is a team, especially with the Derrick Henry, if their defense plays well, like they can play physically, like this is a team that can cause you a problem in a one-and-done kind of playoff scenario. And I agree with that, right? Like it absolutely makes sense. And they are kind of a hard team to figure out because you look at them and you're like, they play in Tennessee, so nobody really gives a shit about them. Then you look at him and you say, well, Ryan Tannehill is certainly no superstar. He's not, right? You don't have, outside of Derrick Henry, you don't have any other what you would call really marquee big-name stars, although Kevin Byard, the safety, has been a stud for a number of years. Jeffrey Simmons is a stud, right? It's not like the talent cupboard's been bare, but since they traded A.J. Brown before 2022, it's like, right? So it'd be hard-pressed to believe me if I told you that this Titans team last year, even after trading an A.J. Brown to the Philadelphia Eagles, started off the season 7-3. 7-3. Yeah. That's crazy, right? Like you start off 7-3, you got visions of the playoffs dancing in your head. You might have visions of making it to the Super Bowl dancing in your head. But not for this Titans team because they hit the skids late in the year, and then once Tannehill got hurt, it really went all downhill. They lost their last 7 games and ended up missing the playoffs going 7-10. To which some are going to say, well, if Tannehill would have stayed healthy, they'd have made the playoffs. Maybe, but not a guarantee. You look at even those 7 wins that the Titans had last year, not a single one of them came against a playoff team. And when they started facing some tougher teams later in the season, combine that with the quarterback challenges, who knows, right? They beat up on some of the teams that they should have, but it wasn't enough. So now you look at the Titans, they're also in this really awkward spot of their general manager resigns, but head coach Mike Vrabel's still around. You hire a new general manager in Rand Carthon. So, like, what type of conflict or push and pull is there between a new general manager and a head coach that's been there for a few years that wasn't hired by the current general manager? It's awkward. It's also awkward in terms of this team did not have the long-term answer at the quarterback position on their roster. It's like you've got Ryan Tannehill, what are you going to do? But you also only had the 11th pick in the draft. What are you going to do there? All fair questions, right? So in terms of the team, like they went into the offseason, spent a little bit of money, added some pieces on their offensive line like Daniel Brunskill and Andre Dillard, added Arden Key, so they get themselves another edge rusher. Sean Murphy Bunting, which should be, hopefully for them, a nice addition to the secondary. But then you go into the draft, and sitting there at pick 11, you started hearing some buzz late of like, are they going to try and trade into the Cardinals spot and take a quarterback there? They know they need a quarterback. Well, they didn't. They stayed put at 11, and they took Peter Skoronski, the T-Rex tackle from Northwestern. Don't ask me why everybody was so hyped up on him. Not only just his short arms, but frankly, when I watched him, like especially as a tackle, I didn't see a first-round top 11 talent. That's just me. Good player, plays much better at guard, projects much better at guard in my opinion, but we'll see what they do with him long term. But then they were able in round 2 to get Will Levis. And, whatever knocks you want to have about Will Levis, especially the piece about putting mayonnaise in his coffee, like to me, that's an immediate removal off the draft board. And you're going to say, just for putting mayonnaise in his coffee? No, for he could fucking liking mayonnaise like that. That's unnatural. That's fucking nasty. Who the hell likes mayonnaise like that? That's stupid. And then putting it in his coffee is even more ridiculous. But at that point in time in round 2, it's really hard to knock the Titans for taking him there. Because if they end up in another year drafting a different quarterback, they don't feel like Levis is automatically a totally wasted pick. But, it's a high enough pick that you have something invested in Levis that if you decide you don't want to keep going with Tannehill, you decide you want to shake shit up a little bit, which you would assume they would at some point in time this year, I would think, then Will Levis, you can at least say you want to give him a chance to see what the hell you got in him. And then they also drafted Tyjae Spears, the running back from Tulane, in round 3. And I love this kid. I thought he was a great pick for the Titans, give them a real compliment to Derrick Henry, so you could take a little bit of the load off of Henry, and you could protect Spears, and that way his knees don't give you too many problems. So yeah, in terms of the strengths of this team, starts with the running game, right? Derrick Henry, another season or two, likely ends up a Pro Football Hall of Famer down the line. Needs another really high-profile season or two, most likely. Then you got Tyjae Spears. And one thing you can say about the Titans quarterbacks, whether it's Tannehill, Levis, if you're talking about Malik Willis even, all of their QBs can run. So this is going to be a team in 2023 that'll be able to run the ball and run the ball really, really well. And then similarly, their run defense. They gave up the fewest yards in the league last year against opposing running backs. So when I look at this Titans team sometime, I say this is really a team built for the 80s or 90s because they're tremendous running the ball. They're great at stopping the run. Back in the mid-80s to mid-90s, that's a Super Bowl formula right there. Just have yourself a Tannehill type of quarterback that doesn't make too many mistakes. But the problem is you're talking about 2023. And then you look at their defense. They've got some marquee players there. I mentioned Kevin Byard, Harold Landry, assuming he'll be healthy. Jeffrey Simmons. Like Simmons is a stud, right? So they've got some marquee star talent or star-level talent on their defense. But as I look at this team, you know, their receiving core, they need to get way more out of Treylon Burks in year 2, that's for sure. And what else do they really have there? Their secondary outside of Byard, I'm not exactly sold on. Will they ever get anything out of Caleb Farley? And then I look at the quarterback position, and I say, okay, Tannehill's no scrub, but Tannehill's not that dude. Kind of like the Garoppolo guy, right? You can win games with him, but you don't win a bunch of games because of him, and you don't win the big games in the playoffs. And as a result, can you really fuck around and waste time having that guy be your starting quarterback? And then it's talking about like Will Levis. If he gets an opportunity, is he going to show you enough to where you feel comfortable about not trying to swing for a quarterback in 2024? Fair question. When I look at this team's schedule, you know, the first 6 weeks of the schedule will tell us a lot, I think, about the Titans this year. They go to New Orleans to start off the year. Then they have to come back and face the Chargers at home. So, you know, the Saints look to be improved in 2023 on paper. The Chargers are a playoff team last year. They go to Cleveland in week 3, then have to come back in week 4 to take on Cincinnati. They go to Indianapolis, and the divisional games, you never know what the fuck can happen in week 5. And then they got to come back to face Baltimore. So you've got 3 road games mixed in there, but you've got 3 games against playoff teams. And like I said, the last year, the Titans did not beat a single team that made the playoffs. So if they want this year to be any different, they got to beat one of these playoff teams, 2 of these playoff teams, right? There's a chance here in this schedule for this team to make some hay weeks like 10 to 13 at Tampa Bay, at Jacksonville, hosting Carolina and Indianapolis. That's a stretch of schedule where they could go like 3-1, realistically so. And I say the same thing like weeks 15 to 18. You know, if they're in a spot where they're close to the Jags in this division, if they're close to a playoff spot, they get to play Houston twice, and then you've got Seattle mixed in there and Jacksonville at home in week 18. 3 of those last 4 are at home. This Titans team, I don't want to write them off just yet. I think their time is quickly closing up, right? But I think they could be an 8 or 9 win team this year. I still think the Jags are the best team in this division, but you know, it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility that things go well, get some good breaks for the Titans, that they could slide into the playoff picture. But, you know, to me, that would feel like a waste of a year because even if they did, they're not going anywhere.